Welcome to today's session on how to use Clashtrix. We will not only go through the features of the plugin, but also the best practice of utilizing the clash detection workflow using Navisworks. To begin, we'll start by using the sample project that comes with Revit 2024. If you go to Revit Installation folder under Samples folder, you will find the Snowden project, which includes 7 models for every discipline. We started by renaming these models to have a proper naming convention. These are the files. ARC is for architecture, ELC for electrical, facade is FAC, and so on. Next, we opened this model using Revit. We applied a view template to the 3D views, and we exported these models to NWC format. We need to make sure that Convert Element Properties checkbox have been checked so we can collect all the instance and type parameters of the Revit model in Navisworks. Next, we'll open Navisworks, start a new project, and drag and drop all of these NWCs to prepare our federated model. Now, I have all of these 7 models loaded to my new Navisworks project file. We'll start by preparing the clash tests and search sets. First, we need to create the clash test that covers all the elements within the model. So we'll start by exporting the available categories. We'll go to Clashtrix tab, and we'll click on Export Categories. We will use the default values for the English template for Revit, which are already pre-filled. However, if your models are from different language template, or if your models are coming from different authoring tools, or you're working with IFC models, you might need to change these values to match the properties of your model. To know what values to use, you need to go to your model, select the element, and check the available properties under the Element tab. In our case, we'll use Item Source File for the model that's hosting the element, and Element Category to get the category value. I'll go to Export Categories again. I'll keep these default values. Note that we have a checkbox here. In case you have a family that contains nested families, you can have this checked and it will ignore properties of nested families. So let's say you have a window family with nested panels coming under Generic Model Category. The Generic Model Category from within the window will be ignored if the checkbox is checked, meaning that we will only take the parent value, which is the main family category, and not the nested. I prefer to have it checked to narrow down the output to the categories that are actually needed to be part of the search sets and tests. Now we'll hit Export. Clashtrix will go through all the loaded models, scan all the available properties for every single element, and then get only the unique values. So we will have a CSV file that contains all the categories from all loaded models. The file will automatically open after saving. Note that the headers shows the value used during the export, item, source file, and element category. We need to note that the discipline code is the 3rd block, and it's 3 characters in length. We need to copy to clipboard the part of the name that comes before the discipline code. Now that this is done, let's go to Test Builder and start generating our clash tests and sets test. As you notice here, we don't have any tests or sets in this current model. So we go to Test Builder and start filling the values. Prefixed to skip is the part that comes before the discipline code. I already copied that part, so whatever is coming before the discipline code should be placed here. The discipline code length is the number of characters. In our case, we have ARC, ELC, etc., so we'll put number 3. Our name separator is a dash, and that's the common practice. In case you have an underscore or anything else, you can change it. For test names separator, the default value is space versus space. We'll keep the default value. If you want to include self-clash tests, like AR wall versus AR wall, you can check this. If self-tests are not needed, we can uncheck it. Composite object clashing can also be determined here. Next, we'll define the rule that will build our search sets. If you have already exported categories using item source file and element category, you will use the same in here. Just use same values used with export categories. We also have a checkbox to ignore internal names. If we do so, everything will still work. However, if you want to manually modify a search set later on, you might have to redefine it entirely, because some of the rules will lose their values once edited. This is only happening in Navisworks 2026 onward, because what we see now on screen is only available with Navisworks 2025 and previous version. In 2026, Autodesk have removed the possibility to ignore internal names in order to enhance the optimization or the back-end performance of Navisworks. In our case, we can keep them defined because the default values are already filled for item source file and element category. Values of internal names can be checked from the File options. I'll come to it in a bit. For the test type, I'll use hard, and for the tolerance, I'll set it to 25 millimeters. Main categories to combine allows us to combine several categories into one. For example, we can have walls and wall sweeps as a single set, or maybe have pipes, pipes fitting, pipes insulations, etc. as a single set. So, whatever you put as a main value outside the brackets would be the search set name, and whatever you put between brackets, comma separated, would be the rules that are included. Main category name can be anything, and it doesn't have to be matching the element properties or category. However, the values within the brackets, if working with Revit models, would be the actual Revit categories. So in this case, and for demonstration purpose, I'll change this main category to be staircase and make it all caps. Next, we have categories to ignore. Sometimes you have categories that might have not been excluded from the NWC export and might come up in the Export Categories file. And these are not needed for the sets and clash tests. You can either delete them from the CSV file or define here list of categories to be ignored, comma separated. Categories included here will be ignored, although they might be existing in your CSV. Next, we will load the CSV of export categories that we just exported. This checks allows to include existing sets, so sometimes you have models coming with IFC format, or from Civil 3D, or other authoring tools. Test Builder can be executed several times, depending on the type of models that you have loaded. So in our case, we don't have any existing search set. But in case we had, we can check this box. This would generate clash test between the already existing search set and the one that we've just about to generate. Include name separator value in search conditions. Allows you to include the dash before and after the discipline code. This is just to increase efficiency, in case you might have similarities in naming convention blocks, like originator code might be similar to a discipline code value. Having this checked will reduce the odds. Only in case you are using full file name with no prefix to skip, you can have this unchecked. Otherwise, just keep it checked. Our last checkbox is regarding ACC compatibility. If you check this one, it will work with models loaded using the coordination plugin from ACC, even if you haven't, but might have in the future to load the models from ACC. You can have this checked. Checking it won't harm, and it will make your search sets compatible now and for future possibility of loading the models from ACC using the desktop connector. If you're working on several projects for the same client, you might save the form values as your default. So next time you open the test builder, everything will be there except the loaded CSV, for which you have to load again. Now we are all set and ready to run the tests builder. So let's hit Generate. This will take few seconds to generate all the tests and search sets. Voila! Now we have all the search sets and tests generated based on the categories we have in our 7 loaded models. I'll show you where you can check the internal name. So if you click on the top left icon, then Options, Interface, Developer, you can check the properties from here. Once checked, internal names will be showing between brackets in the Properties palette. Now we can see the values of the internal names. Since we have already generated all the tests using Tests Builder, let's hit Update All. This will take a few minutes to complete. Once the results are updated, we can continue to explore the other features of Clashtrix. The tests results are now updated, and we can see the clash count associated with every test. Let's sort the tests by number to see the results on top. If you recall, when we used the Tests Builder, we input the tolerance value to be 25 mm for all the tests. Let us use the Bulk Actions command and change the tolerance to 0 for any tests related to structure. We'll click on Bulk Actions and input the search words. I can have multiple values, comma separated if needed. In my case, I only need to include str for structure. The condition should be contains to include tests matching the search words. Set the new tolerance value to 0. Let's set also the clash type to be hard conservative, and for the composite object clashing, we'll keep it as it is, since we don't need to change its value, and then hit Apply. Once we do so, we will notice that all the structural tests have been modified with tolerance value 0 and type hard conservative. Next, I'll use export types to generate a matrix having all the test types and tolerances. The file will automatically open after saving. We can do some modifications to the file and import it back if needed, and the tests will get updated accordingly. Notice that all tests related to structural have been modified to HC0 since we used the bulk actions. Let's do some changes and copy some of these cells to other locations. In the export dialog, I can find the abbreviations used for every test type. Also, at any time, you can hover over any tool and hit F1. This will open the help page that tells me more about every feature. Now that we have made changes to the types matrix, let's import it back. Clashtrix will go through all the tests and update the values according to the Excel. Notice that now we don't have the 25 mm for all the tests, and we see the changes done in Excel are reflected in the tests settings. Now we'll try Excel Matrix command to export the summary of the test's result. 2 layouts are available to choose from, top right or bottom left. We can set a value for prefix to skip from tests names in case we have some prefix values. We'll come back to that in a bit. If I am using Navisworks 2026 and my file is saved as version 26, I can use the priority value to color the cells. So for now, I haven't set the priority, so we'll skip that part. Let's try the bottom left matrix layout. Clashtrix will export a summary of all the test results that I have in the model, and it will follow the chosen layout. The separator for the test's names VS will be auto-detected, and matrix will be color-coded for every discipline. Let's try the priority feature now. The file needs to be saved as Navisworks 2026, and the version can be known from here. Now that I have saved it as version 26, I need to close the file and open it again for the priority column to become visible. I will export the priority now and choose the layout I need. Notice that the value for all cells is 0. That is because 0 means priority is not set. In the Export Priority dialog, I have the legend that tells me what each value represents. So 1 is for high, 2 for medium, and 3 is for low. I'll start by filling some values in the Exported Priority Excel. The values should be either 1, 2, or 3. Let's replace all the remaining zeros with 2. The beauty of importing types and priority matrix is that I can do it across different projects. Only the matching test's names will get updated, so if you have already updated the priority or defined them for a previous project, you can import them to another project, and whatever tests that are matching will get updated. Now we can see that the priority value has been defined. Before exporting the matrix again, we'll try to use the Renamer tool. Renamer allows me to find and replace a value, add a prefix or a suffix, remove characters count from the start, or trim everything before specific characters or values. For example, if you have an underscore with some prefix, you can skip until that character. We can also add a number prefix, which we shall use now. You also have the option to import a table having 2 columns, column A for the current test's names and column B for the new names. This means that you can prepare an Excel file where you can use some formulas to shuffle or maybe do some changes to the test names and import it back to rename all. For now, we'll use the Renamer tool to prefix tests numbering. Now, when we export the matrix, we can use Enable Cell Coloring by Priority and My Test Name Contain Prefix checkboxes. If I accidentally forget to check that box and try to do the export, Clashtrix will give me a warning because the matrix headers are too many and no longer unique. I have 01 architecture casework, 02, and so on. The warnings is telling me that the unique headers are too many, which will result in a very large matrix. Clashtrix will ask me whether I might have forgot to check the checkbox indicating that my names have prefix. I know I don't want to proceed, so I click No. I'll go back to the export. I'll check that box, and I can use either Skip Characters Count, which I have here, 4 numbers and underscore, that's 5 characters, or I can skip until string, which is the underscore. So I'll go with the second option, and I will enable the cell coloring. Now I'll use the top right matrix layout so we can see how this looks like. Now we can see that the cells are colored based on the priority matrix that we imported, and the headers are excluding the prefix from the test names. Now we'll go through the rest of the tools. Purge tool allows me to delete tests containing or not containing defined search words, comma separated. So let's say you're from the structural team and only working on the structural model. Thus, you don't care about other disciplines. You only want to keep tests related to the structural department. You can put search word to be str and choose delete tests not containing search words. If you want to keep more than one discipline tests, for example, mechanical and plumbing, you can put MEP, PLU. This means that any test not containing either of these words will get deleted. You can also check delete tests with 0 clashes, which will result in deleting any test with 0 clashes. It is recommended to only do this purge on a copy of the NWD and not on the NWF. The production team working on resolving the clashes can do that to make it easier for them to scroll through the tests. However, in the NWF, where the BIM manager or coordinator is federating the models on weekly or bi-weekly basis, we need to keep all the tests to capture future clash results of all tests. We will not do any purging now because we still would like to test the other tools. Let's try group clashes. You'll notice that we have 0, 1 and then 0, 1, 4, but not 2, 3, 4, and so. This is because tests having 0 clashes are not displayed. Here we can define criteria to group clashes. For example, I'll type architecture walls, and as you start typing, the filter will instantly keep tests containing your input. Let's say you want to group clashes by arc walls. In case the wall is coming before the separator VS, that would be selection A. If it's coming after, that's selection B. Any test ending with arc walls needs to be grouped by selection B, and the opposite by selection A. So what we can do is put VS in the beginning. Now, only tests ending with arc walls will display, and I can hit Select All. It will only select the visible tests. If I clear the filter, I can see that not all the tests are being selected. Let's proceed with grouping the tests by selection B. Now that the results are grouped, I'll go again to the group clashes and type VS arc walls. It will show me all the test endings with arc walls. I will select them all, and then I'm going to delete VS to see all tests containing arc walls. Now we can hit Invert Selection to select the opposite side. Now I can group these by selection A. So, previously we grouped them by selection B because it was ending by architecture walls, and now I'm grouping them by selection A because the tests are starting with arc walls. This is effective to be able to group and solve several clashes at the same time. Now, if we go through the test related to arc walls, for example, arc walls versus PLU pipes, we can see the count because we had the prefix clash count checked when grouped. Therefore, I can tell how many clashes are within each group. Selecting any group will highlight all clashes related to that group. Let's further inspect one of the clash results and use Annotate Pro tool to get more information. If we enable the tool from here, we can spot the elevation extract some properties to display them on the screen, like element ID, diameter, system classification, source model, category, etc. We can also define custom properties if needed. We can set the colors for the snap and for the markups. It is also possible to display the slope as a percentage value if needed. We also can have the values copied to clipboard as we annotate. Also, to avoid having Annotate Pro taking a large portion of the screen, you can collapse it while still being able to annotate. Your settings are stored, and to enable the tool, you need to switch to Snap On. Now, as we hover over, we can see the selected properties of the elements. We have a room properties showing in here. Let's turn off the spot. Select the room, and then select all similar items and hide them from the model. Going back to Annotate Pro and turning the snap on, we can see the properties of the elements as we hover over. This is a pipe with sanitary system. We also have the diameter value. Annotate Pro allows me to select metric or imperial units to display. We can change the colors from here to continue the markup with a different color. The Z values are showing the global elevation. In case you want to get the height, you can define the reference point to be the floor, for example. Now, the Z value will give the relative height from the reference. Every time you move the view, zoom in or out, the markups will be gone, because these are actually saved as viewpoints in a folder named Clashtrix Annotate Pro. If needed, you can right-click on any markup to edit it, or even copy the text. Now, let's check Select by ID. This is actually a palette, and by default will come on the center of the screen. We recommend having it on the side with a small height. It's similar to Revit's Select by ID tool, allowing you to select the elements based on their ID. For instance, I'll copy the element ID of the floor and the wall. I need to have them comma separated. Once we click Select, Clashtrix will select both elements for me. If we check Hide Others and click Select again, the elements will get selected and isolated. Let's click Unhide All to show everything back again. Now that we've covered group clashes, bulk action, purge, rename, Annotate Pro, and Select by ID, let's cover the remaining features. Navisworks' default naming for Clash results is Clash 1, Clash 2, etc. Smart Results allows you to have informative result names based on defined elements' properties and pattern. Let's take, for example, arc walls versus PLU pipes. We will rename these results to display elements' properties like category and diameter. Category 1 is for wall, Category 2 for pipe. Add a separator so I put VS as a custom text and move it up in the pattern order. So I have a wall versus pipe. We are prefixing the current number. We can uncheck that, but we recommend to keep the same number for easy reference. Let's prefix the current number, followed by an underscore. Next, let's add the wall thickness by defining custom property here. It'll be coming from the Element tab. Actually, it should be under Revit Type, with property Width. Once we add it, the preview will update. To have it come between brackets, we can add 2 brackets and move them up in the pattern order. Next, let's add diameter for item 2, which is the pipe. Preview will update here, and we will also make it between brackets. Next, we'll add the system name of the pipe. This comes under Element System Name for item 2. My preview is updated. If we like the settings, we can save them for future uses or to share them with others. Let's do another save. Now we have 2 profiles, and we have the possibility to export these to a file that we can share with others. For example, if we delete the settings and try to import the file containing these settings, a pop-up will show the available profiles within the file, and I can choose what to load. Let's say, for another test, you have the opposite search sets, PLU pipes versus arc walls. You can use the flip item side, and all item 1 will become item 2, and vice versa. Notice that if the value does not exist, you will see double brackets with no value inside. Therefore, we recommend adding a Find Replace condition to avoid that. We will add double brackets for find value and replace it with nothing. Now, if we flip item side, we don't see any empty brackets, so we'll keep it this way since we have walls versus pipes. The last part is to determine the group naming, which can be defined by a single property value, for example, category. Now, let's hit Process and see how this works. Clashtrix renamed all of these results with meaningful names based on clashing elements properties, and also renamed the groups. For example, here I have one wall clashing with 6 pipes. If I keep going up, for example, here I have 4 clashes, the same wall with 2 pipe fittings and 2 pipes. Here I have a wall with 2 pipes fittings and 3 pipes, and so on. If I expand this group, I can tell what their properties are. Since pipe fittings don't have any diameter, and we added Find Replace rule for double brackets, we don't see the brackets here. Based on these properties like system names and diameter, I can quickly approve several clashes in no time. Now that I have approved some clashes, maybe I'll approve some from another test as well. So this was 816. I'll go to 817 and approve some results. To export approved clashes, we have 3 options. Export tests containing search word, for example, containing PLU. Export all approved, or approved after date. The default value for approved after date is actually the date of last run. Tests usually have few seconds or minutes difference. Clashtrix uses the value of the test having the earliest run for date and time. Of course, you can change this value for any date time you need. If I have some tests marked as reviewed, I can also include them in the export, and the assigned to value will also be exported. For approved clashes, approved by and approved date will be exported as well. Let's export the approved clashes. Clashtrix will save the file as an XML, containing all approved and reviewed results from all tests matching my chosen export option. Remember that we have approved results in tests 816 arc walls versus PLU pipes and 817 arc walls versus PLU plumbing. Let's close the file and open again the version we saved earlier that contains no numbers as test names prefix, no groups, and also have original names for results, Clash 1, Clash 2, etc. Let's import the XML for the approved clashes. Note that the test names are different now, but we recall that the approved results were for tests 816 arc walls versus PLU pipes and 817 arc walls versus PLU plumbing. This means that the production team can freely modify their copy of the NWD and rename, group, purge, etc. to facilitate their clash resolution workflow. They will be able to export the approved clashes regardless, and BIM Coordinator will still be able to collect them in the main NWF, because Clashtrix uses the GUID of the results. The last feature is to export detailed tests containing elements properties for clashing elements. Note that tests with no clashes won't be in the list. From here, you can select several tests and specify the export folder. Clashtrix will generate a single Excel file for every selected test. You can try this feature by yourself. This covers all current available features in Clashtrix. Note that by the time this was recorded, the latest release was version 1.1.4. Some features will be included in later releases, and therefore might not be part of this recording. Thank you for your time, and we hope you enjoyed Clashtrix. Always check our website or our page on Autodesk App Store for future releases. You may also follow our LinkedIn page and stay connected with our latest news, updates, tips, and tricks. Clashtrix, redefining efficiency.